The walled city of Famagusta is a Global Heritage Fund listed city. It was just a small fishing village till the 7th century AD, when after the combined catastrophes of earthquakes and raids by Arab pirates, the population of Salamis moved to here. By the year 1300, the town was one of the principal markets in the eastern Mediterranean and headquarters of many Christian religious orders. Famagusta has had many rulers over the years: Byzantine, Licinian, Genoese, Venetian, Ottoman and British, all leaving their mark on the city. When the Venetians arrived in 1489, they started to convert the city from a French medieval one to an Italian Renaissance one. They moved the capital from Nicosia to Famagusta, and around 1550 built the Venetian palace behind me on the ruins of a much earlier 13th century one. The palace was largely destroyed by the Ottomans, but what remains is truly impressive. The most noticeable part is the three-arched entrance where I'm standing. It mirrored the triumphal archways of ancient Rome, and they were even able to use genuine Roman columns salvaged from Salamis. The upper part of the gateway imitates the temples of Greece and Rome, while above the central arch can be seen the arms of Giovanni Renier, the Italian governor of Cyprus at the time. Until recently, the palace was used as a car park. However, it has now been paved over and is frequently used as a venue for open-air concerts. Facing the Venetian palace is the former Latin cathedral of St. Nicholas. It's one of the most impressive Frankish buildings remaining in the Middle East. It was thought to be built around the 1300s on the remains of a much earlier church. The most noticeable features are the two four-sided bell towers. They once had fine windows, but the tracery has now all but disappeared. In Ottoman times, a minaret was added to the northern tower and the church converted into a mosque. Inside, all images of the human form were removed, and any frescoes on the walls were covered with plaster. Stained glass was removed and replaced by clear glass, if replaced at all. Gravestones and even human remains were removed, including those of the last two Licinian kings of Cyprus. As in all mosques, the floor of the church was covered by a carpet, so there is a possibility that some gravestones still remain. One, however, can still be seen. In the northwest corner is the tomb of the Bishop of Famagusta, who is depicted holding his pastoral staff. He was ordained in 1360 and died in 1365 from a chill received while swimming in the sea. The walls of Famagusta are about 2 miles in length, totally surrounding the old city, and are remarkably well preserved. Probably the best view of them is from the moat itself, running for over a mile along the three landward sides. When the Venetians arrived in Famagusta, they inherited a city that already had defensive walls. However, those walls were just not suited for the needs of the late 15th century. So they immediately started to extend and renovate them, where possible building new walls on top of existing rocky outcrops. This is the land gate. It's one of the two original entries to the city of Famagusta, and it's the most spectacular. Originally built by the French Licinians, it stood outside the walls to protect the main entrance to the city. The Venetians greatly extended it and incorporated it into the new city walls, transforming it into a huge defensive structure bristling with cannon emplacements. A series of passages and chambers were built for stables and arms depot, connecting all parts of the bastion. These spaces were put to good use in 1974, when the Turkish Cypriots used the walled city as a place of refuge from the Greek Cypriot militia. On the city side of the gate, you can still see frescoes and coats of arms dating back to the Venetians. To one side, the Ottomans built a small mosque in 1619 for the use of the city guards. Today it houses the city's tourist information centre. The oldest part of the town walls is the Othello's Tower. It was originally built as a moated citadel to protect Famagusta's harbour, but the Venetians incorporated it into the main city walls in order to protect the sea gate to the town. The main entrance to the citadel is through one of the earliest surviving wooden doors in Cyprus. Above the entrance there is a sculpture of the winged lion of St. Mark, the patron saint of Venice. The front paws are on the land, representing Venice's land power, while the rear paws are in the sea, representing her maritime empire. The citadel itself consists of towers with corridors leading to artillery chambers. In times of war, they would have allowed soldiers to move quickly from one part of the castle to another. In more peaceful times, they would have been used to store things that needed to be kept cool, safe and secure. In the courtyard, there are old cannons lying on the ground. One of them is made of bronze and is over 400 years old. There are some iron cannonballs lying about, as well as some stone balls that would have been used in the trebuchet. To one side of the central courtyard is a large vaulted hall with magnificent ribs. It dates to around 1300 and was used as a dining room by the Licinians. The courtyard and vaulted hall are still sometimes used for folklore performances. Close to Othello's Tower are the ruins of St. George of the Latins. The exact date of construction is a little vague, but evidence of a crenellated parapet where defenders could protect the church hints that it was built at a time when the Licinians had not yet completed the city walls. In the southwest corner you'll see the first steps of what was a spiral staircase leading up to the roof. And looking to the northwest, you can see the remnants of a guardhouse with a conical roof and the entrance doorway still visible. Have a look at these slender columns and wonder how on earth they could have supported the massive weight of the roof. Of course they couldn't, and the builders knew this. What they did do, however, was redirect the weight from the roof to specific parts of the outside of the wall. On the outside you'll see large buttresses where the forces converged, and it was those that carried the weight. This meant that the portions of the walls between the pillars were relatively free of weight, giving the builders the opportunity to build large windows almost the entire height of the walls. This is one of the main features of Gothic architecture, and it allows a large amount of light to come into the church. On top of the buttresses there were marble gargoyles to take the rainwater off the roof. One which remains is in the form of a monk, using one of his hands to open his mouth, which acts as a drain. The only entrance which survives is to the north, and this is comparatively well preserved. It is surrounded by carvings. You can see a bearded man wearing a monk's robes, and a lion attacking a lamb. Just a stone's throw away from the main square and St. Nicholas Latin Cathedral is St. George of the Greeks Church. When the Licinians, who of course were French Catholics, took over the island, it was predominantly Eastern Orthodox. They immediately put the church under their control, reducing the number of bishops from 14 to 4 and placing them under the control of the local bishop for their area. Although there was already a perfectly serviceable cathedral church, the tiny St. Simeon, which abuts St. George of the Greeks, the Orthodox community wanted to construct something that rivaled the Latin cathedral, and it has been suggested that the same builders built both. Look at these pillars and see how massive they had to be to support the weight of the roof. But to see the full story, you need to come round to the other side. Have a look at the columns that supported the weight of the roof. They were originally quite slim, but the builders were obviously worried as to whether they could take the weight of the roof or not. And to add extra structural integrity, they put a collar round all of them, making them so much wider than they were. But it would seem the architects were still worried. Look high up in the corners towards the apse. Here you can see some of the huge pots that the builders placed in amongst the rubble in order to make the walls lighter. The apse was at one time filled with vibrant frescoes, some of which can be seen to this day. At some point it was used as a shooting gallery by the British, as evidence in the form of bullet holes show. By the 18th century, the walled city was more or less abandoned. Sailors from the nearby port would disembark and come into the city and etch drawings of the ships into the plaster of the derelict churches. Some of these etchings can be seen at the western end of the church. A passing glance would miss them, but they are readily visible if you're looking for them. During the Ottoman siege, the church would have been one of the landmarks of the city, towering above the city walls. It was a tempting target to the besiegers, and you can still see the damage made by the cannon bombardment, particularly on the southeast side of the church toward the Chamberlain bastion, where the Ottoman artillery was centred. Look closely at the damage and you will still see some of the cannonballs in place. Desdemona Park is the newest park in Famagusta. In the early years of the British occupation, it was used as a storage area for materials and equipment needed for the extension of Famagusta Harbour. More recently it was used as a traffic roundabout, or perhaps oblongabout would be a more accurate description. However, the road layout in the area was such that most traffic ignored the one-way aspect of the system. So the decision was made to return to two-way traffic, pedestrianise the road close to the walls, and to create an eco-friendly garden. The park has been designed to provide a uniquely Cypriot open space. Species of water-resistant and drought-tolerant plants have been planted, and various methods of water conservation have been used. The end result is that compared to a normal garden, maybe 4 tons of water is saved every week here. In the centre of the park there is a decorative fountain. It's a replica of a 16th century fountain built by the Venetians for the garden of the monastery of Ayia in Larnaca. Around the fountain is a circular area planted as a dry garden where absolutely no irrigation is used. This is achieved by the use of cacti and succulents, providing an attractive landscape. There's a small children's play area and numerous seats where you can relax and soak up the atmosphere. Besides showcasing the functionality and beauty of a water-wise landscape, the park provides a welcome respite for visitors and locals alike. The Ottomans inherited a city that was flourishing, and it continued to do so for a number of years. Cyprus was almost at the geographical centre of the Ottoman Empire, and the new rulers capitalised on this. Just a few yards from where I'm standing, a new market depicted in this painting was built, close to both the city centre and the main sea gate. However, along with the Ottoman Empire, Famagusta gradually went into decline, and by the time the British came along, it was almost abandoned, with its buildings collapsing and its streets full of rubble. A major renovation project was started in the 1930s. But the intervention of the war in the 1940s, the struggle for independence in the 50s, and the intercommunal troubles of the 60s and 70s put an end to all work. A renewed effort was made in the 1990s, but sadly politics has come into play, with the Republic of Cyprus, which claims jurisdiction over the entire city, making all-out efforts to block any international funding. However, the main square and shopping area has been pedestrianised, the narrow streets revitalised, and much work has been done to slow the decline of the historic buildings. The driving force behind this has been the mayor of Famagusta, who was born in the city, so let's hear from him.
Famagusta Turkish municipality has made the heritage a priority in Famagusta walled city. Our objective is to promote and conserve this historical heritage which belongs to all mankind. This has been difficult because of lack of funding and expertise. We need the international community's help to conserve Famagusta for future generations.
In this short video, I've only been able to give you a taste of Famagusta. The walled city is compact. You can probably walk from one side to the other in 10 minutes. There's still so much more to do here, so perhaps you'll take some time to visit and spend a few hours exploring. You won't be disappointed.